Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the RDU Buzz, where we talk all about news happening in the area, restaurants, recreation, real estate, all kinds of development in our area.
Yeah. Sorry about last week. I think the whole family was sick last week. I
Yeah.
probably could have pulled it off, but that would have left you with the kids by yourself being sick. Um, anyway, glad to be back this week. So you might have saw the topic when it came up last week. Institutional investors is essentially what we're going to cover tonight, and it's a fascinating topic for a lot of reasons, mainly because it's a very controversial topic. When you typically, if people know about institutional investors, they typically have um, a pretty firm opinion on this.
Yeah.
So tonight we're going to dig into essentially what are institutional investors, why are they a big deal, how many of them are in our market, how many of them are in the national market, and we're going to really dig into some really interesting data, I think. But before we get started, make sure to put in the comments where you are joining from. Looks like Next Level is joining in from Raleigh. Good to have you,
Yeah.
Next Level.
Yeah,
Thanks for
welcome
tuning
back.
in.
Thanks for tuning in again.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we like to see who is coming from the farthest. It's always
That's true.
interesting
Yep.
to me to see people watching from different states, but also across the globe. It's crazy. Like Italy and Qatar have been some of our furthest so
Yeah.
far. Someone was in somewhere in Central America. I can't remember where a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool. So thank you guys for letting us know where you're watching from.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of the data that we're going to go over tonight has been put together by a guy named Lance Lambert. So Lance Lambert is, I guess he's a data analyst. And if
Yeah.
you've ever seen those graphs that Fortune magazine puts out, where basically they take Zillow data and they break it down onto this interactive map, you can basically click each county and get, what is the appreciation going on in this particular county. He's the one that builds those. And so he has a website. It's called Resi Club, and he puts out just an enormous amount of really high level housing data. And one of the topics he talks about a lot is institutional investors. So he defines an institutional investor as an entity that owns 1,000 single family homes or more. I don't know if that's like an across the board definition,
I
or
think
if
it
that's
is.
just
I think
his.
that is kind of like a legal definition of what it is because, yeah, I think people have a misunderstanding of what it is. And I think in general, when you're not in the marketplace, I think people think every single rental is owned by an institutional investor, when in reality, very few of them are owned by institutional investors. And most of them are actually just owned by normal people that might just have a
Yep.
couple homes that they lived in, and instead of selling it, they rented it out as like part of their retirement or something
Yeah.
like that, and they're just like your normal mom and pop kind of
Yeah,
person.
exactly. And we'll get some into some numbers to kind of back that up here in a second. But yeah, so the definition of an institutional investor is an entity that owns 100 or 1,000 single family homes or more. So this isn't like an apartment complex or any kind of commercial space like that. We're talking about single family properties. And by the way, I would love to know y'all's thoughts as we talk about this, because people have a lot of opinions on this subject, and you should.
Definitely.
But anyway, so I'd love to know your thoughts. So that's the definition of an institutional investor. A good example of this is an institution called Blackstone. Blackstone, essentially a hedge fund company that comes in. They're obviously worth billions and billions of dollars, and it's a big deal because if you're in a multiple offer situation, right? So you've got a house, it's the dream house, you love it, you're putting an offer in, there's multiple offers involved. The fear and why this is a big deal is because you, as an average person, could be bidding against this multi-billion-dollar company coming in to also purchase this property. And obviously, as a normal person, we don't stand a chance, right? And
Right.
so,
Yeah. For some people, it depends on what they're going to offer. But for a lot of people, they're like, hey, I need a loan. I'm not paying cash. Like I can only go so high up on this. So it can be hard to be, people don't want to go up against, an institutional investor. And I think people who live in an area don't want all the housing to be bought up by what
yeah,
feels like a company, and it just doesn't feel it just feels kind of icky. People want the chance to become homeowners. And so I think, it at least leads to this perception that that's what's wrong with the housing market, right?
Yeah, yeah. And Next Level said, doesn't Blackstone own several thousand homes? They do. Um, so there's this really interesting chart that shows where they primarily own, and we'll get into that in a second. But they own a significant number of homes.
Yeah.
So what led me to essentially come up with this topic for tonight is Blackstone is purchasing. So right now they own a company called Home Partners of America. Home Partners of America owns a lot of houses in the country, and Blackstone is acquiring, I think it's Tricon. I'm assuming that's how you pronounce that. Tricon
That's what it
Residential,
looks like. Yeah.
who also owns thousands of homes in the country. And so they're merging, and Blackstone will become, I believe, the third largest essentially hedge fund company that owns
Single family homes.
single family
Yeah.
homes. So to get into some of the numbers, and I'm going to share this screen, especially Next Level, so you can see it. So looking at it nationwide, these are homes owned by Blackstone. You've got Atlanta. I mean, look at Atlanta. That is crazy.
Yeah. 7,000 owned by Tricon and 4,000 by Home Partners of America. So you're talking about they'll end up having 11,000 houses, single family homes in Atlanta. And Atlanta's a big city. So, I mean, it's still, I guess, in perspective, is a small percentage wise, but that's a lot of houses for one company to own and be renting out.
It is. And then you have Dallas, Fort Worth, right at a little over 5,000. Concord and Charlotte, they have massive numbers in those areas as well. Yeah. And so you have several cities here where these companies are highly invested in. But then you get down to Raleigh, Cary. It's a very small number.
Yeah. And so thankfully we're only at Home Partners doesn't own any yet, and Tricon. So Blackstone's about to, because they're acquiring Tricon, but they own less than 800 right now. So that's a pretty small amount. I mean, that's obviously 800 homes that a normal person couldn't have bought for their family, but at least I guess it's 800 rentals.
Yeah, exactly. And so I guess my point in all this is, in our area, at least, this isn't as big of a deal, thankfully, as it is in some of these other areas. And if you look at it nationally too, if you added up every single one of these institutional investors and every single home that they own nationwide, they would only own 0.73% of all homes in the country, which is a pretty small number, which is pretty reassuring, because I think when you hear some of the horror stories in this, and in some areas, obviously it's different in, that's the number that spreads it out across the country. But when you're looking at what they own in Atlanta or a Dallas or a Charlotte, it's a little different. But 0.73 is not a doomsday scenario.
Yeah, for sure. Because when you go on, if there's a news article shared or something about the housing market on Facebook by a news company or something like that, I feel like the comments are always, everybody thinks they know the reason why the housing market's so bad. It's the inventory is only tight because I feel like everybody says it, because of all the institutional investors that are in there. And it's just well, I don't think that's really the whole picture of what's going on with the housing market. Sure, it could play into the scenario every now and then, but at the end of the day, there's just not a lot of inventory, and there's a lot of people looking to move. So,
but here's where that becomes potentially a reality is, and probably where that story comes from, is when you look at places like Atlanta and Charlotte and Dallas, where there are thousands and thousands and thousands of homes owned by these companies. And it's a higher percentage. So out of all the companies that out of all the, if you add up, all the homes that these companies own, over a third of them are only in a handful of markets: Atlanta, Charlotte, Tampa, and Dallas. And so that's where the bulk of this buying is happening. So these companies will come in and they'll essentially just bulk buy in a handful of zip codes, which then obviously makes it tough for the average American to compete.
Right.
Fortunately for us, our area is not that way.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I know there were some, like, different bills and things proposed to, like, kinda crack down on institutional investors. I don't know how those would really, go into being passed or anything like that, or if they ever would, because it could kinda cross into this, like, oh, homeowners should be able to sell their house to whoever they want to. But I guess we'll see what kinda happens with that and how
Yeah.
they classify, like, an institutional investor, if the government would classify it as 1,000 or more or a different number.
Yeah, and that was actually to that point, there was actually a bill introduced in, I believe it was in the Senate, the U.S. Senate. Um, I don't think it's gaining much traction, but it was essentially would no longer allow hedge funds to purchase properties. Would be one, and then two, it would force those companies that own properties to essentially divest them and so sell them off.
Wow,
And so
interesting. So you can't be,
um,
like, grandfathered in.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That would be really
It
crazy.
seemed I forget who the senator was. I had it. It was in one of these articles. Um,
Wow.
Jeff Merkley of Oregon.
Wow.
Actually, I'm sorry, I said it was U.S. Senate, it was U.S. House.
Well, it looks like a
Introduced.
US senator and a US House rep.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh-huh. You're right. You're right. Introduced the End Hedge Fund Control of American Homes Act. So I haven't. I mean, this was put out several months ago, and I haven't heard anything since. So it seems like it might not be pushing through. But I mean, at the end of the day, while 0.73% is not a large percentage, it could, I mean, it could spiral out of control if it's not something that is handled or regulated, I should
Yeah,
say. So,
for sure, for sure. And those that are watching or those that are watching the replay later would love to know your thoughts on if you
yeah.
think there should be government
Yeah, should
regulation
there
on
be
these kind of
government
things,
regulation on
or
this? I mean,
should
that's a
should there just be a
that's
free
a
market for anyone or any company to be able to buy homes, or should it have to be non-investors or
yeah.
at least non-hedge fund
Yeah,
investors?
because the housing market is such a large topic right now. Like it will be part of the next election cycle. On both sides of the aisle, the housing market will be discussed. Plans will be put forward of how to help with affordability. And I think this is a piece of that. Um,
Yeah.
Next level says sounds like they're trying to gobble up the market. Yeah, I mean, it's I mean, you especially you look at those regions in like Atlanta or Charlotte or Tampa or Dallas, where they are highly concentrated and purchasing up a lot of property. Um, like that, I mean, it is a big deal there.
Yeah.
It is a really big deal there. And so, if I was living in those cities, it would not be something I would be very happy about. So.
Yeah, for sure, and I wouldn't be very happy if it was, my neighbor's house or something got bought up by that, like an institutional
Yeah,
investor. I'd be
yeah,
like, I really wanted it to be a real person, like
yeah,
a new neighbor, right? So I think just from the frustration of other home buyers, but also the frustration of the people, like, living around it, it's definitely just can be frustrating
yeah,
all around.
yeah, for sure, for sure. All right, moving on from that topic, um, there was
Oh,
an article.
actually, Crystal made a good point.
Oh,
She said, I think there should be some regulation. Home ownership is so important for building wealth, and the investors jeopardize that. That's for sure. I
mhm,
mean, people who own homes have significant more wealth in their life than people that don't. And,
yep,
I think it's such an important part of building wealth in your life, especially as you come to like a retirement age. And those who never had the opportunity to buy are definitely not in as good of a financial position
yeah,
like in that retirement portion of their life,
yeah,
as those who have. So for sure.
yeah, and that's spot on. And I we touched on this one evening, one live. I can't remember when it was. I don't think you had started doing them yet, but we covered a build to rent community that was being built.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
And were you on that?
No, I
Yeah,
just remember you
it
talking
was,
about it.
yeah, but I just it doesn't sit well with like an apartment complex is one thing because it just doesn't take up a large portion of land. But
Right. And
like
it's important. I mean, you
yeah,
need to have there has to
yeah,
be
there
rentals,
has to be
like there
rentals.
has to be.
Yeah,
But
but to take up as
as much
the amount of
space,
space
yeah,
and
with like single
acres,
family homes, it's
yeah,
kind
that
of weird.
was essentially a company building a neighborhood to profit off of the rentals on this massive amount of space that could have gone to Crystal's point, um, to a homeowner build wealth for
Yeah,
their family.
for
So,
sure.
yeah, it's just an odd thing. Um, but anyway, so moving on from the institutional investors, there was a study that came out. Point two. I don't know who point two is. I don't know who this company is,
Yeah,
but they did
I
a
don't know. I don't know. It says they do reports and studies. I don't know. But they put out a report talking about places where it's the best place for Gen Z to have a chance of owning a home.
Yep,
And Durham, North Carolina made the list,
it
which
did.
is kind of shocking to me. So I don't
It
know
was
how much
number
stock
7.
I put into point two, but it was an interesting study.
Yeah, Durham is number 7 on the list. So you got places like Memphis, Fort Worth, Scottsdale, Detroit, and you have Durham. And it's interesting. So if you look at some of the statistics on here, Durham, they have this category home price change. Durham is the only one that had, well, I shouldn't say the only one. The only one above 1% that
Yeah.
had some housing um, um,
Growth.
appreciation or growth. Yeah, everyone else was in the negative. So Durham's like the bright spot on this
Yeah.
list.
Yeah. So there are different categories where home price to income ratio, home price change over time, homes sold over the listed price,
Yep.
days on the market, and the Gen Z home ownership rate and unemployment rate. So those were the categories they were looking in to rank them. I still find it a little odd that Durham made the list in Scottsdale, Arizona, because Scottsdale, Arizona is a well-known like luxury market. So little surprised by that. Other places kind of make sense, like Lincoln, Nebraska, like it just seems like a lower population and maybe an easier entry
Yeah.
point into the market. So I thought it was interesting that Durham made the list because I feel like the people we're helping buy in Durham can have a hard time with bidding wars and stuff sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, it kind of makes sense though, because when you look at the triangle as a whole, Durham is more affordable
For sure.
than
Raleigh.
Yeah, than Raleigh. It's
Yeah.
more affordable than Cary or Apex or Wake Forest or Chapel Hill. And so it's a thriving market that is still affordable,
Yeah.
even within the triangle itself. And
Right.
so this is interesting. It has the Gen Z unemployment rate. Durham is by far the lowest at 1.5%.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah, 1.5%.
Yeah. That's very interesting.
With Detroit being the highest at 11%.
I wonder where Gen Zers are working in the triangle. I'm curious about it now.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. But yeah, I thought it was cool that Durham made the list. I thought it kind of made sense. I mean, when you think of Durham as a city, it's a growing city that is still surprisingly affordable based on kind of what is around it and what those price points are.
Yeah. And I'm curious, what is the actual age? What's the oldest Gen Z?
I have no idea.
Yeah. I don't really know because I'm just wondering if some of those people maybe, because we've helped a lot of people in the past that are moving in for like medical school or residency.
97 to 2012 is Gen Z.
Okay. So 97 would be like 25 roughly. I don't know. But anyway, I do wonder how many of those people maybe are enrolled like at Duke and maybe their parents pitched in and helped them buy a house while they were in medical school or in residency or something, because that could also kind of contribute to that unemployment rate being kind of low. But that's very interesting. It would be interesting to see. I mean, obviously we only have a little bit of information here, but how they kind of came to those numbers.
Yeah, it is. So anyway, I think it's cool. Durham made the list.
Good job, Durham.
Yeah. So Raleigh, so out of the top 100, Charlotte was 27, Greensboro was 28, Raleigh was 43.
Yeah. So it's interesting to me because I feel like Greensboro is much more affordable than Durham is.
Yeah.
So just very interesting. I guess all the other, maybe not as much employment for Gen Z in Greensboro.
Yeah, maybe so. So. All right. The next topic we're going to cover.
This is an exciting one.
Yeah, I'll let you lead this one off.
Fuquay is getting a Target. Target is coming to Fuquay, which is really exciting for the people that live there. I know that I'm sure it's going to be a relief to get a store like a Target. Because I mean, as much as anyone wants to say it, Target is like, I feel like it's just like a necessary part of life to have a superstore kind of thing around where you can go in and get everything you need within one spot. And I think Fuquay does have a Walmart already. I don't
Yeah,
recall.
I'm not sure.
But it'll be nice to have that Target there
Yeah.
for sure. Be helpful for people.
It will. And it's so if you've ever been to if you're local and you've ever been to Garner, in Garner there's this really nice shopping center called White Oak. The same company, or White Oak Crossing, I believe.
Yeah.
The same company that developed White Oak Crossing is the one that's going to develop this.
Okay.
And
Nice.
that's a really nice development in Garner. There's a lot of new construction neighborhoods kind of popping up around that that retail development.
Right.
And so yeah, I mean this is going to be a really nice shopping center. So
Yeah, and I'm sure it's going to anchor. It sounds like some other things too. So hopefully, maybe some more restaurants and I don't know, maybe other small businesses.
yeah, so it says it'll feature 800,000 square feet of retail space, with office and multifamily buildings, and will be built out over the next 10 years.
Okay,
So
wow, that's
it's gonna be a pretty
time.
long.
So it might
Yeah.
be 10 years until you get your target, but
Yeah, but it's coming. It's coming. Yeah, it's gonna be called Gold Leaf Crossing. So kind of continuing that like similar name that they went with in Garner as far as the
yeah, instead of a
development
white
goes.
oak, it's a gold leaf.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to have like a plant and a color.
Yeah. But if this will be kind of on like a main stretch this in downtown, not downtown Fuquay, but this the stretch of real estate this will be on has quite a bit of development already there. It's got like fast food restaurants and stuff like that, grocery stores and whatnot.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's a big deal. Places I've always said, and I've said it about places like Clayton, and Fuquay. These are places where sometimes the residential development outpaces the commercial development, and so anytime you get commercial development wins in these areas, it's a big deal. It's a really big deal because these areas, like the population in these areas,
it's
is
exploding.
exploding, and you need developments like this to help meet that growth.
Right. You don't want to move to an area and feel like, oh, I moved to Fuquay, but I always have to drive to Raleigh to get to Target or something. Like you don't, it's a developing area with a growing population, and it definitely could sustain its own Target for sure.
Yeah. Johnston County did get a Target. Johnston County is where Clayton is. Well, I said they did get a Target. They're going to get a Target, but it's going to be, I believe, in Selma and not in Clayton, which is
kind of weird. I've been rooting for a Clayton Chick-fil-A and a Clayton Target for a while. You guys have, I know y'all want one, so hopefully soon. At least you can drive to. I don't know if driving to Selma is any faster than just going to the Raleigh Target for someone that lives in Clayton, though.
Yeah, probably not, depending on what part of Clayton you're in.
Unfortunate.
All right. So moving on from Target to some housing data. I'm really excited about some of the housing data that came out. Next Level said, I was on Zillow today and found 500 acres for $1 million in 4 Oak.
Wow. Yeah.
That's
They could do some serious commercial development there.
Yeah.
500 acres.
So in January, this past month, it was without a doubt the absolute busiest January we have ever had. I mean, I felt like I was just running crazy.
It was really busy.
And it's good to see some like data behind this, and that this wasn't just, it wasn't just us, but it's kind of the market moving. And so there is, I'm gonna try to a little here we go. Try to shrink this down so I can see it. All right, so I'm going to share this screen with y'all. I got some housing data on here. All right, so new listings. That's a really big number that everyone cares about. I mean, look at this jump from December to January. December, the new listings in the market were 2,000. January, they were right at 3,500. So essentially that means 3,500 new houses were listed in January. Now, why is this a big deal? Because this is the biggest January for new listings we have had since 2021,
That's awesome.
which is a great sign for the market to come. I think as far as loosening up of inventory. So
Yeah.
the
We needed
problem,
some inventory badly,
yeah,
so.
yeah, the problem in the past has been over the past several years is there's not enough inventory to meet the buying demand. And so new listings is the way you fix that. More listings hit the market to meet that buyer demand. Competition um, can hopefully level out some. But 3,500 new listings hit the market this January. Last January, it was 3,100. The January before that in 2022, also 3,100. You have to go back all the way to 2021 to find a better January. So
Yeah.
I think that's a huge deal.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's great because it's definitely been, with the interest rates rising last year, there was a lot of fear with people. I feel like you had this lock-in effect where they were not wanting to move because they're like, look, I've got a 4% interest rate on a less expensive house. If I wanted to move, I'd have to get a higher interest rate on a house that's probably not as nice as the one I'm in to like
Yeah.
keep my payment similar. So I think people are glad that we're not at those 8% numbers. It feels a little more stable, even though we're still higher than, I'm sure people would like sitting closer to the upper sixes. I think people are ready to make a move and ready to put their house on the market.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll be really interested. I mean, you look at all these past years, new listings in January, and they start to tick up all the way until midsummer, and really until May, and then you kind of start to see like a little bit of a decline off from that. So if we're seeing this in January, I think it bodes really well for this year. And so if
Yeah,
we can
yeah.
see inventory improve, because the demand right now has really shocked me, especially I've been tracking interest rates, and last week interest rates hit 7% again. Now they're right under 7% now. They're at 6.9. But the demand with the high interest rates has really shocked me because it's significant.
Yeah. I think people are just accustomed to it now.
Yeah, I
They've
think
been
so
this
too.
way since like the middle of last year and people just know it is what it is. I don't think it's going to really change.
Yeah.
I feel like last year people were like, it's going to change any day now. And then it would change, but for the worse.
Yeah.
It would keep going up. And now it's like, okay, it went down a little and it's kind of just feels steady and similar. So I think people just feel more comfortable. It doesn't feel as volatile as it did this time last year.
Exactly. So yeah, I think all the signs right now are pointing to a really strong year in the housing market when it comes to new listings, when it comes to home buyer demand. We're seeing multiple offers across the board, pretty much at every single price point.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah,
For
I
sure.
think
For sure.
I
Yeah.
think
The competition, the buyers are there and ready. And thankfully, some of the sellers are catching up.
yeah. So I think it's good. The
Yeah.
only other topic I have, I didn't pull a news story for it because it was kind of fresh yesterday, but I saw Disney is investing $1.5 billion into Epic Games, which is
Ah,
the reason that's a big deal. Epic Games, a lot of people may not know this, but they are headquartered in Cary.
yep. Yep. Headquartered
So
here in Cary. They bought that
yeah,
mall and then never did anything with it.
I know. It's so there's an old, it was
Cary Town Center, I think.
I believe so, or Cary Town Mall, or
Yeah.
I can't
Something
remember.
like that.
But anyway, they bought the mall and they basically tore it down to build their new office, and it's really just kind of sitting there. And
Yeah.
I
It's
actually
weird.
I think I covered this several months ago on here. Um and yeah, it's just it's kind of odd. But maybe this 1.5 billion investment from Disney will help expedite that building process some.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
anyway, I thought that was cool. That's and that investment is obviously it's an investment in the company, but that
Yeah. Not in
company,
real estate,
yeah,
but
but
the
that
company's
company
located
is
here.
is headquartered here.
Yeah.
So
It's
that
interesting.
investment goes back to our area to a degree.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true.
Cool. All right. Well, that is all that I have for tonight. I appreciate y'all joining in. Seriously, let us know your thoughts. If you're watching this in the future, let us know your thoughts, especially on the institutional investors. I just thought that was an interesting topic to hit. One that folks are really passionate about, and rightly so. You should be passionate about that. I mean, that's a big deal. So would love to know your thoughts, but that's all we got, and we will see y'all next week.
See you next week.